Today I'd like to show you a couple of tricks how to make nice pictures of your concepts or prototypes. Usually at the end of the semester we gather together in the Orange Hall, we set up our mobile photo studio and I take the pictures of all of your projects. Unfortunately in these times we're not able to do so, but I can show you a couple of things you have to be careful with if you take pictures of your prototypes. Unfortunately, I don't have that nice prototypes of mine by myself, but I will use my little minifigure. Here you can see the little guy, and I can already show you a couple of things you have to be aware of. This, for instance, if you take a picture right now, would show a little minifigure from Lego. You can go a little bit higher, for instance, in order to get the background out, but then the perspective is wrong. So therefore, always be aware of the background and also on the perspective. If I lower down the camera, we are already on eyesight, but then there's still the background visible. In this case, the window I'm close to get as much light as possible. If I go a little bit closer, we can also zoom in on the little guy a little bit. And maybe I'm also able to adjust the brightness on my camera screen a little bit. Now here it's a little bit brighter. This would already take a nice picture. But then there's still the question about the background. So what if I, for instance, take this away and I take a big sheet of cardboard. Most important in this case would be that the cardboard is in the circle around, so you bend them. And this is easily done. Put a couple of weights here, a piece of cabbage over here, that it stays still. And then if you place the little figure around here, doesn't cooperate that much, then you can already see if we zoom in, we could have almost a perfect shot without any disturbing background at all. But here you can also see I'm now on a very wide angle. If I zoom in, back up a little bit, try to establish the zoom, and now you can see that the auto exposure makes the picture a little bit darker. So I will raise that. Now we have a nice picture on eye height with, in this case, a light gray background. And that will already allow us for a nice clean picture that can be taken into a report or a presentation that doesn't bother at all with a fuzzy background. As already mentioned, the scenery in here, resharpen again, helps due to the fact that I'm close to the window. So in this case, you are able to make a very nice clean picture that solely shows your concept and doesn't have any other background that will not focus on your concept. If you like to do it a little bit further, you can also think about to already set a background for the entire scene. So in your case, for instance, if you have a nice furniture, you can already think about setting up, it's a little bit heavier, I have to. So what if you already built an entire room? In this case, for my little guy, I already prepared something in advance, a little workshop. I placed the figure over here, put the little guy over there. And if we then zoom in, try to find the right perspective, most likely an eye height, that would be a nice picture with the Mini Dr. Bucky Lab and one of its toolboxes. Perspective is on eye height, maybe a little bit lower, but then we can already see that the end of the kitchen on top of the frame appears. So therefore I would say we go a little bit lower on that in order to make a perfect shot that is framed well. The lens is important. If, for instance, we zoom in a little bit more, I'm even able to make a tighter crop on that. Yeah, that would be a nice picture of a surrounding. Try to focus on the head of the people, of the figure. And if we zoom all the way out, you can see that the background comes into the picture again, and it still looks a little bit more like a toy or an object that is on a kitchen table. So the more you zoom in this case here, that should be possible on any of your smartphones, or you just go a little bit closer. And by that, you would be able to frame the picture nicely. And due to the fact that I'm close to the window, I have enough light to set up a nice picture. That's easy for smaller parts, so always be aware of the background. A piece of cardboard or paper is already fine, and if you bend it, as I showed, would already be sufficient to have a nice picture. Here in my basement, I have set up a different situation, or a little photo studio that will show a couple of other things. So for instance, if you take the pictures with your smartphone, which is quite well equipped and should do the job for you as fine, I would recommend that you will, for instance, use a tripod. If you don't have a tripod like that, you can also use, in this case, it's a little bit of a smartphone holder, which allows me to click in my smartphone, and then you are able to turn around and adjust that a little bit. What I will always recommend is that you use the manual controls of your smartphone, which means I have already zoomed in, but you can also tap on that, and then, for instance, you can increase the exposure, and then you are able to take a nice picture. This is already as seen here on eye height, so make sure you are able to, in this case, I can show you a little bit from the side. I think I can also zoom out. This is a piece of polystyrene. It's 0.5 millimeters. This is a sheet of 1 by 2 meters. You can get that in Rotterdam at Stout, for instance, for €8 or so. Waldmann's Baushop also has that, but you can also use a piece of paper or even a cloth or something like that. If you don't have a tripod, no problem. You can maybe invest in this little holder. Try to unscrew it while holding it with the other hand. And you may find it handy if you have, for instance, a little smartphone holder like that. If you attach your mobile phone to that, now it's the question, how do I hold this? No, it doesn't work. So we attach this here again. So I can see, sorry for the fuzziness, you have a nice handle to grab. That would already allow, if you take the tripod away, for instance, to have a nice handheld camera. But of course you can also set your camera on a tripod, and maybe you build yourself a little box in order to raise the object in your camera a little bit higher. But by taking pictures with this white background, you're already able to create quite a nice background that can be cropped out entirely. So let's say this also works for bigger objects. I have here a little Flexmobile, and here you can already see there's still background visible, but the more we zoom in, the closer we come and the background disappears. Even with a 1 meter wide sheet like that, it's still in its way. So therefore, we have to zoom in a little bit more. Let's see if that's already fine. So in this case, I could already take a picture like that. And if I zoom even more in, I'm able to create even more white background. Oh. To have this even more separated. This would, for instance, be a nice picture. Also, again, try to figure out how your mobile phone works on the camera if you try to manipulate the exposure manually. Now I'm actually gaining up and I'm zoomed twice or 2 times in. And again, this would be normal focal length and this would be a wide angle shot. So always be aware, my preference is always zoom in a little bit more, step away in order to make the maximum use of your small white background. So I'd like to explain a little bit more how essential the right angle and the perspective of your object is. Let's say I have a little cardboard M here. That's what I found here. That could be either a cardboard M, something like that. That's just an object. We can take pictures. In this case, we have to make sure that we will place them somewhere else or so. We can also lay them flat, have a nice zoom in a little bit, have a nice clean background. That would be a nice picture for an object. Could be a connector or a table or something like that. But this perspective will already suggest that this is more like an object than a furniture or something like that in life size. So if we stand this up and I lower my angle of view, I'll put the camera now on a tripod, adjust it a little bit, that would already make a convincing object that could be, for instance, a huge M that is 2 meters tall. In order to make that effect even bigger, I could also place a figurine next to it. If that wouldn't be a little guy from Monster Inc., but a person, for instance, people will already see and notice that this M or this object would be about 2 meters, 2 meters 20 high or something like that. So, and especially when you shoot it on eye height, it has quite a strong appearance as a thing that is in scale to the human proportion. I can show you again. If I zoom out, for instance, same perspective. Now I try to take the camera off the tripod, and if I hover above, now it becomes like a cardboard M and a toy figurine. And when I zoom, or when I lower the angle of the camera, zoom in a little bit more, have to adjust if the right height is set up. It could be a situation where a huge M as an object, or could be also furniture, is standing in a room. Always be aware that the perspective is quite essential. So, in case you don't have a small tripod and a little smartphone holder in order to hold your smartphone, you could also use a glass, or in this case, a wonderful piece of porcelain made in Denmark. So in this case, you need a rubber band. Put it around here, and then we will, now this is the lens side. Make sure, I would recommend to put the lens accordingly to the height. So in this case, I put them down, which means I'd like to have it here. And then we insert the mobile phone, bring it around, and now you have a tripod holder sort of thing for your smartphone. Let's figure it out. The rubber strap is not a problem. We can actually lower it down all to the floor. And if you then put your figurine somewhere here, I may have to show you a little bit from this angle, and we may also come down a little bit. Come down up here a little bit. So, and now with this little contraption, you are able to take nice pictures on eye height level again. Go on, stand still. So you can zoom in here, Maybe you have to take the iPhone, the rubber band a little bit aside. And then you have a nice stand for that. I'm pretty sure you will also find other ways of fixating a smartphone to the table or somewhere else. Last tricks is a quite technical one, but I think every one of you has a television screen or a laptop at least. So therefore what you can do is you can set up a monitor or a laptop, prepare a little surface in front of it, and if you then attach your mobile phone to the camera holder, zoom in a little bit, try to find the right angle, and you already have a nice background, and in this case eCourse CEMIC Center. Easy as that. You can also just switch the pictures. In this case, white balance maybe have to be adjusted a little bit, but I think it's a very nice way of adding already a background to your pictures if you do it right using a screen of your laptop. And there's no limit, you can also put them on the beach or in the jungle. I think this is the last thing I'd like to show you. I will also take a couple of pictures afterwards and show you how to improve them later on in post-production. So now I'm in Lightroom behind my desk. I use Lightroom. That's the software I know the best. You can also use Photoshop or any other photo or photo software. But I'd like to show you a couple of tricks in order to improve the pictures even more if you want to have a very clean product picture with a perfect white background. So here we see already the pictures I've taken. Here, for instance, just a short remark. Camera angle is maybe a little bit high. If we go down a little bit on eye height of the little figurine, it looks way more convincing. Also, the background I've set up in this case works perfectly. Even on a smartphone, you can get a little shallow depth of field, that the background will be a little bit blurry, and therefore the object in front that is in focus pops even more out of the picture and says, hey, this is what I'd like to show you. Here you see, if I zoom out, the rest of the kitchen is already in the picture, and that looks like a toy seen on a kitchen table. So therefore the context is really important, that you zoom in order to create that look you want. Another one like that, you may be able to crop this even in. If you zoom in a little bit, then you can already have that. But in this case, focus isn't on the point. We go further. Here's the little setup I was showing with the gray piece of cardboard. Just tape them to the table, fixate them, or use some weights. Here the little figurine I've taken, even a better one. Angle is a little bit lower, so therefore we are on eye height. And that's already a nice picture you can take directly. One more. And these are the pictures I've taken downstairs. So if you look at that, for instance, another one, let's say that is something I'd like to have, or maybe here you can see already this looks really like a cardboard letter and the little toy next to it. But in this perspective, if you put it like that, it already looks a little bit more human. Let's see, let's develop this picture. What I will first do, I will now work on JPEGs I've taken from my smartphone. If possible, you can also use raw pictures. They have a little bit, or they have more information embedded in the picture, and therefore you are able to tweak them even more. But JPEGs are also fine. If I normally take pictures, I will always use my bigger DSLR, but you don't have to. Even a smartphone is fine. So here I would actually say we can tweak a little bit the contrasts. We have to adjust the lights a little bit, maybe the darks, that it looks nice. Whites can be adjusted a little bit. The blacks in here can use a little bit of clarity to make them even pop further, removing dust or fog. So, and now on the top right, there's my little video over here. On the top right, you can see the histogram, and that's what I'd like to show you. On the top is a little triangle. And if you hover over that triangle, you will already see a red dot. And I can also push the J button. J will make, no, it doesn't. If you click on that, that little red mark here will stay. Red means overexposed. If you take a picture from someone and the histogram already shows red dots in his face or something like that, or in the sky, that's where there's no detail anymore. But that's actually the case in this picture, what I'd like to achieve in order to place this on a white background where it merges perfectly to the background. So what we can do here, we can actually use the layer of the whites. I'm using a German software here or a German language, but this would be the whites. And I can slide it to the end, and then you will see how the overexposed area will increase. Be aware, underneath here, these little islands, that is where the shade from the letter is. And that's actually what we want. We want to give the impression that this little object is still standing on a surface. So in this case, I opted for the highest whites. You can also do the blacks, for instance. And at a certain point, maybe I'd put this on 0 right now. If I do the exposure, you will, now this is actually well balanced. Usually you would also see, here you can see every now and then in these very edges here, this becomes blue. Blue means that is underexposed. It's perfectly black in this case. We don't need that for our picture, but we need it perfect white. So I will go for the exposure from the picture. And now we can also use this brush. I will set everything to 0. We will add the exposure higher, and I will use a automatic mask function here, make sure that's on, and I can adjust the size of the brush a little bit, and then I brush even more exposure, overexposure on here. That makes the entire background really, really bright white. And you can see I can also go a little bit over because this is here on auto. I will also add this a little bit here. So everything that is red right now is fully overexposed and pure white, white as it can be. If we now toggle this off, you can see this is already white, but we have still details here. So again, red means overexposed. If I switch it off, it's a perfect white picture. And if I now export this picture as Mike onto my desktop, it's now running. And if I open, for instance, a Word document. So now I'm in Word. I had to switch shortly the programs because Zoom wasn't capturing my Word document. So in here, in Word, you can insert the little picture I've just processed from file. Here is Mike already, and I insert it in here. And then you can see it perfectly blends into the layout of that page. You can, of course, if you like, add a little frame or something like that. But as you have seen, if you don't do anything, the picture merges perfectly into this background. If you want to further process this, for instance, in Photoshop for a photo montage or collage or something like that, or you want to make a poster out of that, that picture would be now very suitable in order to place it wherever you want. It merges perfectly with the white background because overexposed, in this case in Lightroom, red is perfect white, and that is as white as, for instance, a Word document can be. So therefore, that is a quick tip in order to improve pictures which have a high quality, looks like a professional product picture that can also make life easier when you further work it with that. But of course, as I've mentioned, you can already take the picture I've taken with the gray background. I'd like to find that. It's on the movies, the little taking pictures, photos, and here let's see something like that, for instance, could already be inserted here and will also make a nice picture. On mark, enter, hello. So that's also fine, that it will separate a little bit more from the layout if you like so. Thank you very much. I hope you learned a little bit, a couple of tricks, and play around a little bit with your smartphone. If you already have a better camera and you know a little bit more, please use that, of course. This is the minimum set and a couple of easy tricks you can achieve on your kitchen table to make your pictures pop a little bit better. Especially take care of the background. Make sure you do everything as possible in the camera already, then it's less work in Photoshop later on. Try to lower the camera on an eye height of your subject. If you are able to place a little figure or something like that, that will help to set the scale of the scene, that you get the impression that this is really a life-size furniture, table, or anything else that will be placed in the room. See you soon. Bye. Thank you very much.